loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. Yes, I'm the winner, yeah.
There we go. Maybe I should unmute myself as well. That would make this work even better. Okay. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Oola Corner, the place where we talk all things Oola. Now, what is Oola, you say? Well, Oola actually comes from it's actually a made up word, and it stems from the French Ooh la la, which is basically living a life of awesomeness. It was coined by two amazing guys, Dr. Dave and Dr. Troy, as they set out on their journey to impact 1 billion lives with this amazing word. My name is Mona. I am a certified Oola Life Coach, and today I am here with Joel Hasenritter. Do I pronounce that correct?
You did. You get 5 points.
Thank you. Woohoo! I love getting 5 points. Joel, how are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the Oola Corner.
Thank you so much for having me, Mona. I really appreciate it. It's been nice getting to know you over the past several months and seeing you at the famous Oola Palooza just a few months ago.
Yeah.
That was an amazing experience. That was my first time. Was that your first time as well?
That was my first time as well. And I brought my friend Phil, who's, behind the scenes here. And I think for both of us, it was just so transitional, even though I've known about Oola for so long. And it was Phil's first introduction to it. But I feel like the impact of that event, it just blew my mind, really.
Yeah, same. It's funny coming to an event like that as a coach, because we've heard the stories, we've studied the material, we've applied it to our life, we're living this in as imperfectly as we can, but
Yes.
living it every day, and still it was incredibly impactful. I would highly encourage anybody that has not gone to Oola Palooza to experience Oola at that level. So that was transformative for me. A little bit about me. I moved from Georgia to Arizona about 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years now, getting close to it. I'm married to a beautiful bride. We have 3 incredible children. And over the past now 12 years or so, my wife's health had been in steady decline. And so she went from, highly active, running law firms and the chief cardiologist at a hospital, running the office there and helping them with all sorts of things in the back office, and went from that, and over about a decade's time, her health began to just plummet. And so going from that state where she was incredibly active and incredibly mobile and so forth, the couple of years prior to us moving out here, she was basically bedridden. And we all get to this point, and at some point in our life, we have this pivotal moment. We have a moment where you look back and you say, okay, if the last 10 years is indicative of the direction that we're going for the next 10 years, then something needs to change. Something drastic needs to change. We had no idea what. We had no idea how. She was born and raised in Georgia. I moved there when I was probably 5 or 6 or so. And so we had, our network there. We had our church community there. We had our support system there. Both of our parents there, our families and siblings were there. And yet we noticed several different patterns in big storms that would come through, and weather patterns and barometric pressure changes that it would negatively affect her. Right. And so I started doing a ton of research on weather patterns and how that affects the body and so forth, which led us to having to pick: do we keep the direction that we're going, or do we make a shift? And so we decided to take a big leap of faith and leave all of that behind. I had a business I had built over the prior 18 years that was doing well, and it was start over time. It was reinvention time, and so we made this jump. We had our two older kids had lived in Arizona already, and so we noticed that when we would go out there to visit them, that she felt better, and it also happened to be in the top 10 list of most stable climates in this country anyway. So others were enticing. We considered Austin, we considered San Diego, we considered several different places, and just realized that it would be nice emotionally, an added benefit emotionally, to kind of reconnect the family again with our older kids that had moved out here, and also be in a place that she could hopefully heal and recover and, go from there. So for a lot of people that go through these transitions, moving is not a big deal. People, military families, especially my sisters in the military, or husbands in the military, and so they're moving every 2 or 3 years, and it's just not a big deal. Yeah. Not as big of a deal as it is for us, who, when we got married, slightly tongue-in-cheek, slightly sarcastic, but slightly not. I was doing a lot of traveling at that point for training, and Stephanie looked at me and she said, I love your sense of adventure. I love that you love to travel. And if you ever decide to move anywhere else, you're welcome to come back and visit me in Georgia, because I'm not leaving the state. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to make those choices and make those changes. And I'm delighted to say that she's about 50% better than what she was. She is able to hold down a part-time job again. She's able to have family dinners with us and cook meals and go to church with us, and things that, prior to that we kind of took for granted, and are really enjoying, still in transition, but transitioning into a new era for us, so.
That's beautiful. I mean, good for her, and good for you for making that decision. I can attest to the difficulties of transitioning. This is my 6th country living in, so have I have traveled a lot. I have been to different places. I do think that I think I developed that, like you said, military family mentality towards it. Yeah. But I can, at the same time, I can relate to that, what you said before, that realization of, where am I now, and where have I been for the past 10 years, and is that where I want to be? So at one point, I didn't want to move anymore, but I didn't want to stay where I was. So it was decision time, and my choice was to come here to the US, obviously making that choice with my family, and then just working towards, getting here, which for me was, 3 years. So working and developing, and before we were able to make that move. But now that I'm here, it feels weird.
Yeah, we were lucky. We didn't have to have a language barrier. We didn't have to, cross cultures, although there, of course, this country is so big and so diverse with all sorts of cultures. There is a cultural difference in different geographies of this country, but we didn't have to navigate a language. And we also knew a couple of people here in this state as well. So that helped a lot. We definitely leaned on them quite a bit. So.
Right. So what would you say then? What was your biggest challenge in coming to that decision that, hey, we're going to leave behind this support system, our family, our church family, my business that I worked 18 years, and I'm sure you put blood, sweat, and tears into that business to get it to the place where it was. What was the biggest challenges you met in that period of pivoting?
We could talk about the challenges for a week, I think. But to boil it down, it really just came back to our value system.
Mm.
And we put a higher value on quality of life and on being able to live life than we do on some of the security blanket things that we mentioned before. And how does that look? When we had both of our parents were 20 minutes away from the house, and if our daughter had to get picked up from school because she was sick and I was at work and Steph was in bed, then we had a system to do that.
Mhm.
All of the things that I can't even tell you how many meals were dropped off for us during those couple of years of just people pouring in and blessing us, and
Mm.
which means so much to me, but it also elevates that value.
Right.
It becomes something that you appreciate and don't take for granted,
Right.
so
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, it took probably a year for us to come to that decision. There's always the hope of something new. There's always a new doctor. There's always a new method, a new way of trying to do something. And we just exhausted the resources that we had to try and do things that were in our control to make an improvement. And at least the things that we were knowledgeable of at that time, because we have incorporated other things since moving here. And it just became one of those things like, I don't know what else to do. And what we're doing now is it's not acceptable, not in not accepting where she was at in her health, but not acceptable to not try and do something. And sometimes you do get to that point, right? A loved one that is perhaps on a deathbed, and there's nothing in your control. But I really felt like, in seeing some of the patterns of the weather shifts and in seeing some of the things, I just felt like we both felt that there was something more that we could do, even if it meant sacrificing. And
Right.
in Oola, we talk about having a healthy level of disgust. And in our case, it was both a healthy level of disgust in where we were at, but also a healthy level of desire to move our life forward. And it's like I said, it took about a year to get to that place. And once we did, then it was like, okay, then we're all in. And what all in looked like for us is my parents partially moved into our home to help pack up the home so I could work. We went through this process of getting everything boxed up, and our son flew out from Arizona to help me drive across the country, which was a big sacrifice for him. We broke down in every state on the way, and every point along the way was just obstacle, after obstacle, but we made it.
Wow.
But the intention of, this is the decision that we're making, and we're going to do whatever we can to adhere to that and to move our life forward in that direction. And what that looked like for me personally was reinventing myself.
Right.
So I was in a service business. I'm a concert piano tuner by trade. And so I had built a clientele of concert halls and churches and, teachers and home pianos and so forth that were, I watched some of these kids in these homes grow up over the past 18 years and graduate and move off. So they were a big part of my life and the connection that we had there. But it took years to create a sustainable business that way, And so knowing that I had no network in Arizona, knowing that I knew one piano technician in Arizona. And it was somebody that I had met about 18 years prior that we just happen to keep in touch every now and then. But so I went through and said, okay, well, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my interests? If money were no object, if we didn't have those obstacles, what would I choose to do? And can I make money doing it? And so I went through different technology certifications and management certifications in the technology space, had incredible interviews with a tech team that was going to be doing autonomous vehicles. They were going to be studying autonomous vehicles. And it was like all the glitzy lights went off in my head of, I love stuff like that. Like that gets me going. It's like, yes, this is something new. It's something amazing. And a week before we moved out, they decided to go with someone else.
Oh, no.
And so I'm coming home from work and I get the email, and it was just like, wow, that's a week before we push off. Our son is already en route. You know, he'll would have arrived a couple of days after that. And what do we do? Like, what do we do? So Steph and I prayed about it. We talked about it. We sought counsel over it, and just decided independently, and then came together as a unit, that this was the decision that we made because of a bigger picture than what my job is going to be right now. And this is the decision that we made because of a bigger picture of how we want to change our life and how we wanted to move our life forward. And so we felt like that was the direction that we were being called to, and decided to go anyway.
Wow.
So, and then the house that we were selling, which we had owned for 14 years prior to moving, the people who were buying it, their financing fell through 2 weeks before moving out. So the house sale fell through, and then my job fell through within a couple of weeks of us shifting out. And that was the gut punch, you know, because our plan was, well, I can rely on those finances and then get something going career-wise. And
Right.
no, not so much. We lived with our older daughter for 3 months in her single bedroom apartment, you know, and she put up with us for 3 months.
Bless
And
her.
oh, indeed. And indeed, we couldn't have done it without her. So, but you know, sometimes you do get to that point where you make a decision and you know it's the right decision. And even if you have these obstacles and blockers, as we call them in Oola, it's still the right thing to do. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's the right thing. And it was for us.
I mean, even just having one of those incidents, either not getting the job or not the house not selling, would be enough for people to say, okay, you know, the universe is telling me that I'm not supposed to do this. So for you guys to stay the course, so my husband's big on etymology and the meaning of words and where they stem from and where they come from. And we were talking about fear, and he says, well, fear, what it actually means, or the lack of fear, is staying the course. Staying the course. So you fought that blocker of fear, you stayed the course, you went through with it. So good for you. Like that's awesome.
Fear was a big one for us, for both of us. For me as the provider of the family, is could I put food on the table, you know? And we've got a little girl at home and a wife I'm caring for, and a medical system. We had no idea how that was going to work. And the transportation, here's the reality of it, which it's something that I realized very soon after moving. And that is that had I have taken that job, I knew it would require everything of me, because it was a newer direction. And while I had some tech experience and I had helped other people in the tech space with their business and invention and so forth, it would have taken everything, every ounce of energy and every minute of my time to do that job well.
Right.
And I realized shortly after moving here that had I have gotten that job, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have gotten fired, because there were so many medical appointments that we were doing right when we first got here. It was when the day she flew in, I took her to the ER. That's the kind of, like, it was just nonstop. And so as we were working through finding new doctors and finding a different perspective medically, traditionally, non-traditionally, working on our home and ridding the toxins out of our house and just trying to get this environment a healing space, it took being here in my home to do that. Yes. And being available. And so either I would have gotten fired or her health would have suffered. And neither of those are good options. And what looked like just devastation, and it certainly felt like that in the moment, wound up being a blessing in disguise, because it wouldn't have been the right decision.
Yeah. So what would you say? So we're talking about in Oola, we always talk about, well, we talk about blockers, but we also talk about accelerators, which are those positive emotions of love and gratitude and passion. So what would you say was your accelerator through this time, through this kind of going through this transition?
Yeah, certainly love was a big part of it. I love her to pieces.
I can
And
tell.
so if there's an inconvenience over the next few years of our life of something getting out of our comfort zone,
Mhm.
okay.
Right.
In the big picture of things, that's nothing. It's time, it's
Yeah.
energy, it's all of those things, but it's nothing anywhere near the value that I place in her as a
Yeah.
person. And really what I wanted, in spite of what it took for me, I wanted her to have her life back at whatever level that could be.
Mhm.
If it was not, and I had this conversation, I asked her, I said, if when you go out to Phoenix and you visit the kids and you feel better, if that's as good as it gets for the rest of your life, is it worth upending your life from the comfort and convenience and security and all the things that you wanted in Georgia, the network, the support system? Is it worth it for you? And she said, yeah, if that's as good as it gets, I can live with that. I said, okay.
Wow.
Then we jump as high and as far as we can.
That's beautiful. And I love, when you talk about even when you were facing blockers and your job fell through and the house fell through and you would come to the decision individually but then come together as a unit. So I think that's just, it just shows how strong your relationship is, and that's just beautiful. Beautiful. Very.
It wasn't
Thank
without
you
its
for sharing
bumps.
that.
We've been through our seasons of bumps and bumps and regrets, but at the end of the day, um, we are who we're supposed to be to each other and with each other.
Yeah.
And so that the dedication of sticking it out, the dedication of learning how to do things differently. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that as a couple, it's hard to do in the moment, is when you're in the moment of, if I can paint this picture, two boxers or two wrestlers or whatever. I do jujitsu, so two jujitsu fighters. And, in the moment of that match, the hardest thing to do is to say, this isn't going well. What can I do differently? Like, that's really hard to do. And especially with someone that you live with. And so it took making those decisions and also asking those questions and seeking the counsel to
Yeah.
to learn those things. And
Yeah.
we did, but it's work. It always is work.
I agree. I've been married 21 years, uh, lived in six different countries, so packed up and moved 6 times, three children, and it takes work. And I think that's one thing that people kind of tend to everybody thinks, oh, happily ever after. That's what it is. I'm supposed to be happy ever after. And it's like, no, like the happiness comes with work. It takes conscious effort to build that
Yeah.
relationship. And one thing that you mentioned that I know that I love the whole concept of is reinvention. So I'm assuming, this not only the move, it was an opportunity for you, or like you didn't really have a choice, like the reinvention had to take place. But what about, because I feel like this conversation is going a little bit differently, but I love the direction it's going in. But what about in and within your relationship with your wife and having to make those changes and reinventions, for yourself and then your wife and then together? Was that something that you guys had to face as well?
Yeah, we did. Absolutely. I mean, um, so much of walking through a hardship and doing it together is, one, your why has to be united. You know, if we were moving out to Arizona because I got a career change and that was not a healthy environment for her, it wouldn't have worked. Right. So we had to really get on the same page and really get on the same page, but settled in who we are as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a critical place to be, because if where you are is solely dependent on who you're with, you know, this codependency thing that society has kind of amped up a little bit, then you're not going to be able to stand on your own 2 feet when the time comes, when the times get tough. You know, you have to have the strength to do that. And I did in some areas and I didn't in other areas, you know. She did in some areas and she didn't in other areas. And so this process of moving out here was not just a reinvention of what we do, it was a rediscovery of who we are.
Oh, so beautiful.
And it was along that path of searching for who are we as individuals and who are we as a couple. That's how I found Oola, actually.
Right.
But you know, you have to ask those questions, and you have to be able to communicate that in a way that you're accepting of each other, but also united in who you are together. And so that took work. You know, that took a lot of work as well. You know, communication, nothing happens without communication. And not just communication, but communicating well. And those are not the same thing.
And I think people sometimes misunderstand communication. Communication doesn't necessarily mean talk. Sometimes
or yelling.
Right. But sometimes communication just means sit down and listen. Just listen. You know, you listen and hear. Actually hear what the other person is saying, hear what the other person has to say. You know, and that might be totally different from what you think they're saying, but just sit down and listen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I resonate a lot with everything that you're saying, and in us moving, like part of us moving is part of what I call our trauma story, which was, you know, something, and I'm sure, you know, even with you guys and your wife, you know, having her deteriorating health, like that must have been traumatic for you as well. So I think at one point in our lives, we all have that thing happen that we're like, you know, I feel helpless here. And, you know, we had that. So part of our moving was because of the trauma, but the decision to come here to the US was a family decision, which, and it has allowed us to, just like you said, come together as a family, one, but also to develop ourselves individually and stand up to become the people that we were created to be. And that has been a beautiful journey, which for me in my family life, this last, I want to say 2 years have almost been a blessing, because we've been able to come together. We've been able to identify who we are as people and where we want to go and how we want to develop that. And part of it was just, like you said as well earlier, you know, for me, 2020 was like, okay, everything stops. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. Do I want to be here 3 years from now? Do I want to be here 5 years from now? The answer was no. So then, okay, what do I need to do differently? And that was our journey. But you said, you know, in reinventing yourself, that's when Oola came into your life. So let's talk some Oola.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to circle back real quick to what you said about the 3 and 5 year thing. I was on, you may have been on this call as well, a coaching call. In Oola, the coaches get coached as well. And on one of those calls,
every week,
on one
more.
of those, sometimes more, many times more. On one of those calls, the presenter was talking about how we typically set this 1 year goal or goals in the year perspective. But she had a beautiful exercise that was very impactful for me. And that is to write down your name, the names of your loved ones, of those who are in your really, really tight inner circle, your kids, your spouse, you know, your parents perhaps, and so forth. And write their ages 3 years from now.
I remember that.
Wasn't that
I remember.
powerful? That was so
Ah,
powerful.
it was,
Bec-
yeah.
It just, it shifts the perspective of not just who do I need to be today, but who do I need to be today to become the person that they need 3 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, in 3 years, we may be empty nesters.
Right.
That's a whole different change in chapters and seasons of life that
Yeah.
we should start thinking about. You know,
And for me as well, on the other side of that, it's okay, so how old will I be 3 years from now? And if I don't make any changes now, what is my life going to look like in 3 years? Well, I'm just going to be 3 years older and nothing is going to change.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's what I find so powerful with Oola is that you do every day, you take 3 steps. Some
yeah,
days it's huge steps and you're just, jumping in your 7 mile boots, and other days it might be like tiny steps, but it doesn't
yeah,
matter, you're taking steps every day.
yeah.
So how do you feel Oola has impacted your life?
It's radically changed my life, as in the people that I know whom I'm close to have come to me and said, what's different? What are you doing different? And what is it that you're doing? Because there's something different from who you were to who you are today. And who I am today is nowhere near where I want to be tomorrow. Like I've got a lot of work. And that's one thing I love about the Oola Coaching Network is there's no perfect coaches in Oola. Like we are moving our life forward intentionally and by design using a framework and a system.
Yes.
We just happen to have the knowledge of that framework and system and can show it and teach it to other people. But the stigma around life coaching, I wasn't even going to get into life coaching. Like it wasn't a part of my vision because I had this stigma about it. And it's a stigma for a reason, because you see the life coaches that have the 3 secrets that only they know in the entire world of everybody that's done personal development since the beginning of time, that's going to put you posing in front of a jet or a Ferrari just like them. And I told my advisory coach, Danielle, who is amazing, shout out to Danielle. I told her in the beginning, before I decided to become a coach, I said, just so you know, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So you'll never have to guess what I'm thinking. And I'm not going to be that pretentious person that poses in front of a jet with all, and she goes, what are you talking about? That's not Oola. We have the Oola Seeker and the Oola Guru, which we can get into. I'm sure your audience knows already.
Yeah.
And everybody's working on their life. It's not one perfect person that has the secret. It's not a secret. It's a system. It was a framework that can apply wherever you're at in life. So where I was when I found Oola is I was drowning. Like we had moved here. I didn't know. We're, renting a home, which we still are, by the way. We haven't purchased a home yet. We had one car that we towed behind this 26-foot truck through all these different states that we broke down in, which is a lot of fun. And, there was a lot that we were still trying to figure out. And so I was reading, I had heard about Oola through a different network. And so I thought, well, I keep hearing about them. I guess I should read their book. And so I love audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks all the time. And I've done personal development for most of my life, like most of my conscious life, after my mid-teens, I would say. And so I read the book and I really enjoyed it. Like it's a great book. But I read the book and set it down and did what is usually the default in most personal development books, courses, conventions, seminars, webinars. And that is, you go to this thing, you read this book, you have this experience, and then you go home and the notes, the workbook is under a pile of laundry somewhere.
Yep.
And it became something you did instead of something that you're living. Mm-hmm. And if it's just something that you do, 24 years later, it's history. Like it's gone.
Yep.
And so I read the book, I set it down, thought, cool, that's a great book. I read another book called Resilience, which is an incredible book as well. And fast forward, another 6 months or so, and I'm still looking for answers. And I just kept, I need to read that book again. I need to read Oola again. So it was at the end of the year, I was doing a kind of a retrospective on the year, and not knowing it was an actual exercise in Oola, but just looking at, where did I win? Where did I lose? How can I not repeat the failures that I made and the mistakes that I made?
Yeah.
And so I read that book again. And of course you get more out of it the second time.
Mhm.
But, in the back of the book, there's the application of Oola to your life.
Yep.
And I was listening to that going, what in the world? How did I not do this 6 months ago?
Yep.
It's just one of those moments. And so I downloaded the planner and I hopped on Facebook and started joining their groups and listening to the guys live and just kind of soaking it all in.
Mhm.
And then I heard them say, we have this coaching network. And if you have a heart for people and you love this space of personal development, then consider becoming a coach. And I still had no intention on becoming a coach. I decided after much anguish to go through the coaching course and become a certified coach, because I love learning things at the level that I can teach it. Because that's how I know I've got it here and here, and not just, again, something that you do or something that you go through. So it took, I saved up my pennies and hopped on the call with Danielle, and she just happened to be the one who I hopped on the call with. And it was really interesting for me because I went on the call assuming that their process, their business model was certifying coaches,
Mhm.
not helping people, because that's the stigma.
Right.
And
Yep.
so I thought, oh, this will be, I know how this conversation is going to go.
Another sales call.
Another sales call. I've done sales before. I understand this stuff. It's like,
Yep.
okay, all my defenses were up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I hopped on the call, and about 30 seconds in, it became very clear that Danielle was not here to answer questions. Danielle was here to interview me.
Right. Yeah.
Am I the kind of person that Oola wants?
Right.
And I went, oh, that's different.
Oh.
Because you can go
Oh.
buy a certification for life coaching,
Yeah.
just Google it and you can buy as many as you want. That's not what this is. And it's not how that path developed for me. And so once I realized that and went through the coaching material for myself, started applying it to my life, it just one thing led to another. And the vision of Oola affecting 1 billion lives in the next 7 years, that really spoke to me. And I went from, I should really dive into another career and reinvent myself, to I really need to just affect people.
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
grabbed me. And so
Goosebump moment.
that's when I said, okay, I guess I'm doing this, as a business. And so I had a major meltdown moment around that, because I understand what it takes to run a business and own a business, and the dedication and sacrifice. And I had a pretty big major meltdown moment, but it was another pivotal moment for me to say, okay, the meltdown wasn't just about the amount of work and energy. It was also my purpose being connected to those two things. And it's like, whew, can I pull this off? And I've really, really enjoyed being a part of this network and being part of the group, getting to know the guys, getting to know amazing humans like yourself. It's been amazing.
Well, I am very grateful that you made that decision to be a part of the Oola Army and to go out there and help people. And Joe, I had so many goosebump moments throughout our conversation today, and I'm very glad that you were able to come on and share that with
Thank
us
you.
today. So thank you so much. And for
Thank you for having
anyone
me.
out there listening that would like to continue this conversation or get in touch with you, what are some of the ways they can get in touch with you?
I'm on social media, Joel Hassenritter. Most people can't spell that. So the easiest way is just to go to my website. It's wayfindersforlife.com, wayfindersforlife.com. And there's my phone number's on there, my email address. You can contact me through that. Yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with anybody, especially those who are in a moment of transition. You know, we've been through this, we're walking through this. And if that's where you're at, where you don't know what that next step is for tomorrow, then let's talk. Let's have a conversation around that.
Well, I guess this is a conversation for the 4 million of you out there that decided that, you know, your 9 to 5 job is no longer your passion and you're looking for something bigger. I think the person you need to talk to is sitting right here with us today, Joel Hassan-Ritter. So please reach out to him. If you do want to, you know, catch up with me and see what's going on my side of things, my passion is to dare for you to start dreaming again. What is that life that I really want? And for that, there should be a QR code at the bottom. You can scan that and you will find me as well. And for that, Joel, thank you so much. This has been such a powerful conversation. I love every minute of it. And
Thank you, Mona.
for everybody out there, as we say in Oola, be grateful, have
Be
faith.
grateful, have faith,
And
go get your Oola life.
All right. Have fun. Bye.
Take care.
You can You can be losing.